Okay, let's start with this particular document. I think it is a declassified document which you can actually find today on the website of the American CIA. The heading reads CIA's Secret War in Angola. If you scroll down a little, you are going to read this. The United States is today deeply involved in a brutal war in Angola. That was in 1975. 18 years later, that is in 1993, the United Nations called the Angola War the worst war in the world. However, after this war was over in 2002, that is 27 years after they started, the US National Security Archive revealed that this guy was the main brain behind that war. Shortly, I'm going to come back to this document and I'm going to read for you some specific weapons that America supplied to sponsor war in Angola for 27 years. And I'm also going to talk about this guy and how he started it all. For now, let's try and understand the background story behind this. It was a Tuesday morning on May 8, 1945. The nationalist group in Nigeria gathered a massive crowd and started a protest. The protest was against their colonial ruler, which was France. But unfortunately, this very day, 45,000 Algerians were killed for demanding independence from the French. And this particular event marked the beginning of the end to the colonial rule in Africa. On March 22nd, 1947, the Madagascar nationalists started a similar protest. It was again against colonial rule in Africa. In August of the same year, that is 1947, similar protests and conflicts, readiness for guerrilla warfare started in Ghana, which was led by Kwame Nkrumah. Between page 18 and 19 of Kwame Nkrumah's biography, his biographer, David Birmingham, wrote, West Africa's East-wide model colony witnessed a riot and business premises were looted. Listen to this. The African Revolution had begun. Truly, at this point, the African Revolution had begun. Africans were finally ready to get colonial rulers out of their territories. But there was a problem, and that problem was, even though the Europeans' power knew they had to leave Africa after World War II, world powers like the US wanted to keep their influence so that they could have access to the raw material of the African continent, even though colonial rule is no longer in existence. And how are they going to do that? Well, there is only one way, and that is to be sure that whoever rule any of these young nations is going to be obedient to the American powers. To achieve this, sometimes the United States calls some coups in Africa. Some other time, it is a civil war. And that leads us to Angola and 27 years long war. On Tuesday, 11th November 1975, Angola got her independence from Portugal. Now, this independence only came after many years of battle against the colonial rulers. And this battle was led by three important groups in this country. First, you have the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA, the National Liberation Front of Angola, FNLA, and the National Union for the total independence of Angola, UNITA. Now, even though these three groups, when they were fighting for the independence of their country, they were kind of like fighting for a united goal, that is, for the colonial rulers to leave their country. Immediately they got the independence, however, it became obvious that they were different people. For example, MPLA were Marxists, while UNITA and FNLA were capitalists in ideology. And don't forget what I told you earlier. Even though the Europeans' power knew they had to leave Africa after World War II, world powers like the US wanted to keep their influence.
The CIA director going in with an aide, a colonel with him with charts and map, was saying, "Gentlemen, this is a map of Africa, and here is Angola. In Angola, there are three liberation movements. There's the FNLA, headed by Roland Roberto. They're the good guys. We've dealt with him for some time. There's the MPLA, headed by Agostinho Neto, who's a drunken, psychotic poet with a Marxist background. They're the bad guys." And they used exactly that terminology, the good guys and the bad guys, so these people on the National Security Council could get it straight what the game was.
This then leads us to this guy. His name is Henry Kissinger. Kissinger became the National Security Advisor to the US President in January 20, 1969. And just 4 years later, in 1973, he became the Secretary of State. According to this Guardian news report, before Kissinger, America usually ignored most of the things that went on in Africa. But when Kissinger became the security advisor, he became the man who shaped the US foreign policy from 1969 to 1976. And that was the exact time the Angola War started. And why? Well, Kissinger and the United States were worried that if in Angola a political party that is Marxist in ideology become the leader,
there's no way that the MPLA government can survive without Soviet hardware and Cuban manpower.
Then such political party is going to become a closer friend to the Soviet Union, not to the United States.
This means that the Soviets can use Angola in a number of different ways. It gives them a client that cannot say no.
And that means United States will not have influence on the resources or political situations of such country.
Oil has become Angola's principal source of hard currency. Ironically, the MPLA's major partner is the U.S. petroleum giant Chevron Gulf.
February of 1976, Gulf was back in, pumping the oil again, with Cuban soldiers protecting their installation and their technicians to defend them from CI mercenaries who were still mucking around northern Angola.
The Cubans are not the only ones to profit in Angola. Texaco, General Tire, the Chase Manhattan Bank, and IBM all have participated in over $1 billion in annual U.S. Angolan trade. Will Lewis, manager of Chevron Gulf's oil concession in Angola.
Chevron has no intention of pulling out of Angola. We intend to continue to do business as usual. We intend to expand our operations into the new concession area.
On Saturday, 3rd of January 1976, the American President Gerald Ford wrote a letter and sent it to the Nigerian head of state. Somehow, this letter made it to the press and was published on page 6 of the New York Times. Now, guess what the content of the letter was all about? Yeah, you probably guessed right. Angola. In this letter, American president made it clear that a socialist party would not be allowed to reign in Angola. And guess what the next thing is? Weapons. At this point in the video, I have to take you back to the very document I show you at the beginning of this video. And if you care to know, this document is today on the official website of the CIA, so you can look it up if you care to see this detail yourself. So now let's read. A part of that document read, CIA is now spending $50 million. Remember, that was 1975. A lot of money on the Angola War, and has already sent 5 artillery spotter planes piloted by Americans into the Angola battle zones. What you get from this is US didn't just pull out $50 million at the beginning of this war. They sent plane that was piloted by Americans, which is not what you do when there is civil war in another country. Now, take for example, let's say there is a war going on in my country, Nigeria, a civil war, and because America is supporting a particular group, is sending millions of dollars to that group. But not just that, Americans pilots are actually in that war front. Now, that is not all. I have more to read for you, so let's do it together. If you read this document downward, you are going to see specifics. For example, here are some lists of the planes US sent. IJS Air Force C-141 transport jet flying on behalf of the CIA regularly land at the airport in Kinshasa, that is former Congo, disgorging tons of military supplies, including rifles, machine guns, light artillery, rocket launcher, and ammunition. These supplies are in turn being flown into Angola by small plane. Now, this was just at the beginning of the war. If you think you have read the craziest thing the United States will ever do, let me read a part of this document for you. Just scroll down a little and you are going to read this. US mercenaries are now fighting in Angola. Read that again and let it sink. US mercenaries are now fighting in Angola. Think about this for a moment. It was not just that United States sent millions and millions of dollars to this group to fight war and destroy their countries. They sent planes and all these machine guns, but that was not enough. US had to send mercenaries, which today, if the US want to talk about how evil some countries are, they will tell you how Russia is fighting in Ukraine with mercenaries, as if that was what Russia started. Now, there is more for you to read in this document, trust me. So let's do it together. Just scroll down a little and you are going to read this. A nationwide recruitment effort actually began in the US. These mercenary groups that were fighting in Angola for America were actually recruiting more and more people in the United States to go and destroy Africa. And don't forget this, all of this was going on because a single man think it was the right thing to do, and that man was Henry Kissinger. And to justify his actions, Henry Kissinger repeatedly claimed that US was forced to intervene in Angola because the Soviet Union was already providing military aid to the MPLA, that is the Marxist group they thought they were fighting against. But then, after the war, which lasted 27 years, as I have told you, the US National Security Archive showed that, in fact, Kissinger lied to Congress to justify US intervention. That lie, my friend, was what led to 27 years of bloodshed. 1.5 million people were killed. 3.5 million people ran away from their homes. 86,000 people became handicapped. And listen to this. These are the figures we can see and can't. Because if you think about it very well, wherever there is a war, and after the war, there is a statistic that tells you 1.5 million people died in that war. What we have to understand is that the real figure of the numbers of people that war killed is probably 30 million. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so think about this. When you started a war that killed somebody's father, what happened is that 5-year-old boy whose father you killed in that battle, you have killed him too. Because he will never recover from the trauma of losing his father to the war you started. That 7-year-old girl that you kill her father, or you kill her sister, you kill her mother, she will never recover from the trauma of that war. And so it is for the widows, the orphans, the brothers, the sisters, the uncles that lose precious breadwinners and loved ones.
Take them to Cuba.
And your son, how old is he?
He was 12 when he was taken away.
So it is safe to say that in Angola alone, Henry Kissinger killed 20 million people. And that was not just the only war this guy started in Africa. Because I have no time, I would have loved to tell you his story as related to South Africa. For example, in 1975, black South Africans protested with this poster. As you can read it, "Defy the Kissinger-Foster conspiracy." This was after 140 black high school students were killed by Kissinger America NATO. You can open book and talk about Kissinger's evil in Ethiopia, Mozambique, and many other African countries. But this guy did not just do his evil in Africa. For example, in 1973, Israeli protesters carried this signboard. In Egypt, it is Kissinger. In Israel, Killinger. In 1974, Greek protesters carried this. Kissinger, you have won Nobel Prize for murder. All across the globe, this guy was known to be notorious for causing war, killing innocent people. I bet he enjoyed the agony, the pain, the death from whichever country America has interest. I'm sure he smiles wherever he sees corpses. He probably even swim in their blood. He even drank their blood because, yeah, he is bloodly rich. And don't think I am saying all these negative things about this man because I am black and he's white. Because every single person on the corridor of power in the United States knows how evil this guy is.
Where the Secretary and I have a very profound difference. In the last debate, and I believe in her book, very good book, by the way, in her book and in this last debate, she talked about getting the approval or the support or the mentoring of Henry Kissinger. Now, I find it rather amazing because I happen to believe that Henry Kissinger was one of the most destructive secretaries of state in the modern history of this country. I am proud to say that Henry Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger. And in fact, Kissinger's actions in Cambodia, when the United States bombed that country, overthrew Prince Sihanouk, created the instability for Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge to come in, who then butchered some 3 million innocent people, one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. So count me in as somebody who will not be listening to Henry Kissinger.
And now we have come to the end of this video. I would like to end by asking you a simple question, which is, do you think this guy paid any price for all his evil deed? No. Do you think he was prosecuted for all his obvious evil and millions of deaths he caused? Never. Why? Well, because he works for the United States. Because you can do anything under the sun, doesn't matter how evil it is, as long as you are doing it for the king of this world, you are protected.